Colleagues, this effort in Montana to censure Representative Zephyr is just the latest attempt to punish LGBTQ elected officials, allies, and community members and push them out of the conversation completely. And that's happening across the country just for signaling support of LGBTQ people. Representative Marie Turner in Oklahoma, the first non-binary representative in Oklahoma, was censured in early March for helping a demonstrator. Representative Justin Jones and Representative Justin Pearson of Tennessee were both expelled from the legislature for participating with constituents for protesting a lack of action on gun safety legislation. In that same legislature, a white colleague, the two that were expelled were black, a white colleague was spared from expulsion for the same violation. For anti-LGBTQ lawmakers to launch a verbal and legislative and procedural war against transgender people in Nebraska, in Montana, in Oklahoma, in Illinois, in Missouri, in Ohio, in Texas, in Florida, in Nevada, in Idaho, Oklahoma, Kansas, South Dakota, North Dakota, all over this country, and censure Montana's only trans lawmaker just for telling the truth that they have blood on their hands is destructive and absurd. What Representative Zephyr said is incomparable to the harmful and hateful rhetoric of these anti-LGBTQ lawmakers, and it's incomparable to the undeniable harm that this legislation is going to have on the people of Montana. It's incomparable to the measurable, serious harm that bills like LB 574 are going to have on the people of Nebraska. And people like Representative Zephyr, their voices are needed now more than ever at this moment, and our opponents know that. Our opponents understand that. Our opponents want to pass these bills at any cost, taking you moderates along with them as collateral damage, circling the wagons around you and telling you you don't have a choice, as they are determined to silence the people who are standing up for this community. Government representation for LGBTQ people in the United States is more important than ever. It's so essential for all people to be able to see themselves in positions of power, reflected by the people who make decisions about their lives, especially in conservative states like Montana, especially in conservative states like Nebraska. Transgender people have to be allowed to have conversations about their lives. This is the same recycled playbook that we've seen year after year in the 70s and 80s and 90s around the AIDS crisis. Cutting gay men in particular out of public life, not letting them talk about their families and their experiences. Even up until recent years, not having marriage equality, not allowing gay couples to adopt. Still in Nebraska, if I was married to a woman and I had a picture of a woman on my desk and I worked for a private company in this state, I could be fired for that. So how does it make sense that I get elected to the state legislature in this state? I've got an office in the Capitol and I could have a picture of my wife on my desk and nothing happens to me. Thank you, Mr. President. But all of you would vote to say that in a private business they can. That makes no sense. The silencing and the censure against Representative Zephyr for speaking up in support of transgender Montanans is an attack on our nation's democratic ideals. It's an attack on free speech. It's an attack on our values. And it's an assault on democracy to suppress the already underrepresented, already marginalized voices of LGBTQ people and people of color and the lawmakers who are elected to represent them. This is a very disturbing trend across our entire country. As LGBTQ people and their allies in Tennessee, Oklahoma, and other states have also faced recent threats of censure.
Senator, you're next in the queue, and that's your last time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. As people all over this country have faced threats of censure who are elected by their constituents to come in here and do the same exact job as you, it's discrimination too. It's discrimination in the exact same way. It is BS, and it's discrimination for me to have this complaint, this formal investigation hand-delivered to me in my office saying that I have a conflict of interest because I'm a mother. Do mothers not have conflicts of interest who may be voting on LB 626 to ban abortion care in Nebraska? There's like 14 of you who grow yellow corn in here. You don't have a conflict of interest for contributing to the ethanol industry? Talked all about that yesterday and, Thursday or whatever day we were here. It goes without saying. I think when things go without saying, we can let them go without saying, but it must be said that the standard for what is a conflict of interest has reached an absurd point. Senator Brandt said, trying to be supportive, but he said, I don't even think it's worth talking about. No, all of you need to stare in the face of what you have brought to this legislature, what you have brought to this state by insisting that LB 574, come hell or high water, make it across the finish line. Whether we have to pause the session in the middle of the final minutes of select file reading, select file debate, so that Speaker Arch and Senator Kauth can have a private meeting for 45 minutes. I've never heard of it. Nobody has. We had to close the chamber doors after that vote because protesters in the rotunda were yelling and chanting and protesting so passionately. And Speaker Arch says, well, we all must moderate our passions. The problem is when we get too passionate. Many people would say that's fascist rhetoric and gaslighting, at least, to say the reason you're upset, equivocating being upset at someone taking your rights away as the same as being upset that someone was rude to you, that somebody sent you a mean email, that you had to hear a protester yelling, that's what's uncivil, that's what's uncollegial. That it was a breach of decorum for Representative Zoe Zephyr to say that when increases in suicide come to Montana because of bans on trans health care and exclusion of LGBTQ Montanans, that those representatives who voted for that bill will have, quote, blood on their hands. To say that that's violence, inciting an insurrection? Mind you, there was an insurrection in this country on January 6th. They really did try that. It is not the same thing as a duly elected official saying that lawmakers will have blood on their hands for supporting a ban on trans health care. This false equivalency has got to stop. Whether it's accusing me of having a conflict of interest for being a loving mother, whether it's saying that the first trans lawmaker in the state of Montana trying to stop the suicide of trans kids is the same as an insurrection, and get real, be serious. Trans kids they're just kids. They're just kids like everyone else's kids. I know that Senator Kauth is very afraid of her son seeing a woman in the locker room or something like that.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. But these kids are just kids, like everybody else. My son is in track. He's a long-distance runner. And today he has a meet. And it's maybe his 4th or 5th meet, and I have not been to one of them yet this year. It's my only child's first foray into athletics, and I haven't been able to see him one time running because I've been here fighting for his rights. But I think I'll get to go to his meet on Friday, so I'm excited about that. Thank you, Mr. President.